Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the ASAP Pathway podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Stacy, and I have just the honor and privilege, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation with my friend and fellow airway warrior, Peter Beckwith. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Good to see you, Stacy.
Good to see you. And it's so funny. I don't know. There's certain people I meet in my life, Peter, and I just connect with, just on a soul level, if you will. And you just are one of those people. And for those who aren't familiar with who you are, after I read, and I took his bio, everyone, I told Peter ahead of time, his bio is beautiful, and it's hard for me to get through and not get emotional, to be honest, um, because of where he was and where he is. But I had to like abbreviate it a little bit so you all can learn more about him. We'll have links for how you can connect with Peter and get to know Peter a little bit better. But I hope I can bring Peter Beckwith to you all and you get to know him through this discussion today. So, Peter Beckwith is a master storyteller whose journey of resilience and reinvention showcases the power of vulnerability and defying assumptions. He's a Cornell graduate. He began his career in television production, but his path took unexpected turns. The early 2000s brought surprises. His wife and mother of his children became incapacitated by a chronic and debilitating illness. Financial ruin followed in 2008. He lost everything else, including his dignity, to drug and alcohol addiction in 2011. In 2012, after hitting a desperate spiritual, emotional, and financial bottom, Peter didn't just rebuild his life, he redefined it. In 2017, at 51, he co-founded Mad Rose Media, a digital marketing agency for airway, holistic, and biologic dental practices. In 2024, he became a partner at Oasis Wellness Center, championing physical and spiritual recovery through healing therapies. His message to healthcare professionals is simple, but the implementation is not easy. To thrive in today's world of corporate medicine and shrinking reimbursements, you must embrace thought leadership as a provider and adopt a boutique wellness mindset as a practice owner. Truth. That is so true. From overcoming addiction to launching successful businesses in his 50s, Peter's journey is a testament to the power of vulnerability, purpose, and community. As a thought leader in holistic and airway focused care, he guides professionals and entrepreneurs on how to stand out and thrive. I did a good job reading that without crying.
Yes, you did. It's hard to sit through that, and I wrote it. It's
Well,
never
it
mind that I
takes you
lived through
back,
all
right?
that. Wow, that's
You have
great.
been through some stuff, Peter, and you've
Yeah,
overcome and you have resilience. I think I think sometimes when we meet people, I love Brene Brown. Are you familiar with Brene Brown?
hmm
She has said things like, I don't really want to even have a conversation with you until you've been in the arena and you've had your butt kicked?
right.
And I kind of feel like, you and I have had that in common in the past, just, you know, uh, going through our journey in life and then here we are, talking about airway health. And you do have to have resilience, to be a healthcare provider today and to make your, message stand out. And so I wanted to just have you kind of take the floor a little bit and just tell everybody like how you even started. You've been in this for decades and
Sure.
how did you start? Why airway health? What in the world? I mean, your past had nothing to do with that technically
No,
professionally, but
yeah, it's funny that when you asked me to send over that bio, no, a lot of times I'll take the addiction part of the story out of the bio, but in your case, for the same reasons, it's such an important part of the connection that we have, so I decided to include it. I don't hide from that, but when you were talking about all the things that I've been through, one of the commonalities between my own life journey and what I talk to practitioners about is that yes, I've been through a lot, and the beginning of change was I put myself through a lot.
mm,
So it was choices and actions that I'd taken that had gotten me there. Now, none of that makes me a good or a bad person. None of that makes me a victim or a hero. That's just the truth. And what I've found with practitioners, to your point, and I'll tell you how I got into airway, is that that moment usually happens around some version of they see a truth that they can no longer hide from.
Mm.
My case, when the drugs and alcohol got really bad, I started seeing truth after truth that I just could not hide from anymore. And it's a very similar journey. And that's a big part of the support that I give to practitioners is I understand that. And I also understand the temptation to want to look away from that truth because there's a lot of comfort in the familiar. Even
Oh,
if the familiar is moving us in the quote unquote wrong direction, there's still a lot of comfort there. So there's a big, when I decided to recover from addiction, and it was a decision, that was it. I knew what was familiar, I knew what was comfortable, and I had to take a right turn into the unknown. And that really is one of the hardest parts that I see when practitioners transition away from what they've been doing traditionally into kind of dentistry 3.0 or an airway focus or a holistic focus or a biologic focus or whatever you want to call it, where there's a whole bunch of unknown. The only thing they're sure of is that that's a better path for them and their patients, but they have no idea where they're going or how they're going to get there. And that's a scary place to be in. My journey started in 1996. After I graduated from Cornell, I went to, actually became a ski bum on the East Coast. My parents were much more interested in me getting a high level education than I was. That never really was my thing. I was a good test taker, so I got into Cornell and I went, but I did it more for them than I did for myself. And when I got out, their full expectation is that I was going to go work a corporate job. My oldest daughter works a corporate job. I sometimes think maybe I should have listened to my parents. It's a pretty good gig. But that just wasn't my thing. I was a bit of a rebel and more of a creative soul. So I went to Vermont and became a ski bum. And I met a guy there at one of the nightclubs, and we opened a video production company, and we're doing pretty well. And one day I was at work, and David, my partner, said, "Oh yeah, there's an orthodontist in town who's going to come over and talk to us about a video." So we were on the second floor, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Up the stairs walks this 6'2", just confident, erect, shoulders back, upright, not an ounce of body fat on him, as I remember it. And he and I have a little bit different memory. He stuck his hand out, said, "Hi, I'm Bill Hang. Did you have teeth removed as a teenager when you had orthodontic treatment?" He came out of the gate with that. And I was like, "Yeah, matter of fact, I did. Nice to meet you. My name's Peter." And had no idea that that conversation was going to change the trajectory of my life over time, as it has for so many others. And Bill and those in his generation, Michael Gelb's dad, Bill,
yes.
uh,
John
John,
Yu. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just the amount of I don't want to digress too much from the story, but you think it's hard for us. I was there
Amen.
back
Let's
then.
give credit where credit's due. Here's
Oh,
the
it
reality is we're standing on the shoulders of people
we really are. We really are.
that
They
have,
just took,
and they're still taking, like John Mew's still taking a butt
I
kick.
know,
Okay. Uh,
crazy.
it's crazy. So
It's
what
crazy.
these guys did, and I'm with you, Peter. Like I started off 20 years ago plus doing this, and I had a lecturer look at me in the audience. Now that's humbling and go, "Hey, you had four teeth removed when you were." I'm like, "Oh wow." Talk about I walked out feeling like Quasimodo. Like, how
Mhm.
obvious is my extraction orthodontics?
Right. And then so I made a couple of videos for Bill to build his practice out here in Los Angeles. He was making the move. We made two videos and did some cool special effects and facial morphs. And back then that was very cutting edge stuff. And then we went our separate ways, but stayed in touch. I also moved to California because of my television career. My now 30-year-old daughter was turning 10. I guess this is back in 2004, 2005, and I reconnected with Bill so he could treat her. And they needed a new website. And Debbie, I said we should shoot some testimonial videos. My wife at the time was becoming. We didn't know how the extent of the illness was going to be, but she had some health problems, so I couldn't travel anymore. And So I said, sure. And we shot a bunch of video testimonials, and then we couldn't figure out how to embed them in the website. The streaming services that I was calling, because that was so new, were, $4,000 or $5,000 a month just to show the videos. And this is
Mm,
in 2005. I mean, that's a lot of money now. It was a whole bunch of money back then.
yes.
So I called my friends in show business and said, what am I going to do? And they said, well, there's this new service that's going to put all of us out of business. It's called YouTube. And here's how it works. You post your video and anybody can steal it and they can post it on their website and the whole thing. So I was like, oh boy. So I went in and talked to Debbie and I gave her the sales pitch of a lifetime. I said, I've got the best idea. And she had spent a lot of money on these testimonials. It took me like 6 months and it was a lot. And she said, I just spent X number of thousands of dollars with you. And now you're telling me we're going to give those videos away to anybody in the world that wants to use them. I said, yes, it's going to be fantastic, Debbie. It's going to be the best thing that ever happened. And I just didn't have any other options. So we finally convinced her. And sure enough, we put the videos in the website. And in fact, I think it was 30 days later, those videos were being shown in 43 countries around the world, in every state in the United States, and the phone started ringing. And again, that's the television commercial kind of version of what happened, but they were very long form videos that explained what symptoms related to airway related and facial growth guidance problems were, and how you could get some answers to those problems. And they did very, very well because they were educating people about a problem that they intuitively knew existed but couldn't define with language.
Yes.
And
Yes.
really that's been kind of my role in the airway world, since I've started, is how do we find language for this that will resonate, and so that people can identify with the problem and then we can offer them a solution. So I worked as a freelancer for Bill and Debbie for 10 or 12 years and then started Mad Rose 7 years ago. And can I tell our off-camera story where I said I love Mad Rose and hate Mad Rose at the same time?
Yeah,
That's another thing that I relate to my
sure
clients
can.
about. They're like, I love Airway and hate Airway. I said, well, you should run an agency where there's just 50 people like you, because I feel the same way. I can't wait
Exactly.
some days, and other days I don't want to go to the office.
I get it. And we all get any healthcare provider listening right now or anyone that owns a business, like you love it and you hate it all rolled
Yeah.
into one. And it's a passion, but it's like you said, you haven't had a day off in 7 years. I haven't had a day off in 20 something years. But someday I think I'll get a day off. But you're right with that. And to the point with like, Bill Hang, John Mew, Karen O'Rourke, people like Gelb, McNamara and orthodontics,
Yeah.
people who are talking about airway, and it's kind of interesting when you go back to the research, the literature over 100 years ago talked about stuff like this.
Mhm.
And then it just kind of got buried as new paradigms and practice management, how you fit, how to run and design an orthodontic office and what's a practical way for a primary care dentist and different things like that. And that kind of guides where the research and the information that people want. So, if people don't really want to talk about that anymore because they're so busy keeping a business open and volume and how do we, it kind of just starts to dwindle a little bit, but
Mhm.
it's coming back. It's making a definite emergence. And I had a podcast with Dr. Stanley Liu, a couple of weeks ago where he talked about the importance of the nose, obviously, with his history. Um, he was just really talking about how dentists really were, if you would have asked, like he said, even 5+ years ago when he would speak, it was all about the AHI and what gets the AHI down. And there really wasn't a lot of talk about the nose because the nose wasn't really getting the AHI down when you would change the nose. And now we know the AHI really doesn't matter. The AHI is just about reimbursement from the insurance company. Uh,
Mhm.
there's quality of life, all these different things, heart rate variability, and different things that we can't even truly measure yet. That we know that when we get an open nose and we get that proper lip seal and we get someone with a good oral rest posture and growth and development, that just life opens up differently. And we
Hmm.
still haven't been able to put full metrics on that yet. But he said what's interesting is the profession that kept beating the drum to get the discussion about nasal patency back on the podium is it's been the dentists.
Hmm.
The dentists have gotten the nose, the topic of the nose. And so, uh, like you said, definitely back when airway wasn't even being discussed in dentistry. Now we got the American Dental Association saying, thanks to Steve Carsonson and people like him, putting it part of the guidelines of a screening that every dentist should be screening airway in adults and children. It should be part of your risk factor assessment with every patient: cavity detection, periodontal disease, function, and airway. Those are the
Hmm.
four things we should be looking at as dentists. Um, these guys were doing it way back before that was part of the discussion, and they were looked at like they were crazy, and they were being reported to boards and all kinds of crazy. So the bravery that they had to have. So, but still, to your point, and like in your bio, healthcare providers today still have to be brave, and they still have to have the courage to do something that's different, that steps out of their paradigm. And like you said, sometimes it takes, just once you see something and you can't unsee it, or you realize something, you just have to make the change. Um, and it's scary because even the most toxic, dysfunctional things that you might be dealing with in your life, you continue to do because it's familiar. And
Hmm.
familiar feels better than, even though it's dysfunctional, or it's not the right thing, or it's still familiar. And our brains will sometimes talk us out of making a change, even though that change is good for us because it prefers familiar.
Sure.
So, how do you, when you're talking to healthcare providers that do not dentistry per se, someone in a the dental realm, and they're not looking at airway at all? I mean, what do you have? How can you speak to that? Because
If
someone,
I rarely will talk to providers who aren't looking at airway at all. I don't see that very often anymore. And most of the providers that talk to me are looking at airway, which is
yeah,
why they do talk to me. However, just a little bit of a ricochet off of that question. You were talking about the people whose shoulders that we stand on. They didn't have community. They had to do it all alone. And the one I think topic that maybe I'm just a little bit self-righteous about when people do talk to me and they say, "What should I do?" My first response is, the first thing you need to do is get connected, get into a community, right? And it's what you and I talked about because I think yours is the premier community for many of them out there, which is just get connected to a group of like-minded people who are going to point you in directions based on what your personal preferences are around your learning journey. And ASAP can do that, AAP, PMD can do that. There are others, but the getting connected to a community is step one. So when you and I first met, and I continued to, you said I gave you a lot of Atta girls, but I've been waiting years to see something like what you're doing at ASAP, which is just a supportive platform where doctors can launch and they don't have to feel like they're the Lone Ranger. Because Dr. Hang, when we were going through it for years on set, and I am a workaholic. Unfortunately, I've always been a workaholic. Then I became other aholics. I got rid of those, but kept the workaholic. Bill and Debbie and I would sit in his office all day Saturday and all day Sunday, coming up with language and different ways to say things. And there would be emails from XYZ of how dare you this and how dare you that. Not
yeah,
always, but they'd come in and they would consume him. And we had nowhere to go with that except for, the three of us just saying, you know, we're doing the right thing. We've got to keep moving forward. That's no longer the case. There are communities like yours where regardless of where you are on the journey, you can get connected and get supported. And there's experience that can be shared. You don't have to do anything alone. So I think that's a tremendous first step, is to just get connected. And your community is, a fantastic one to start with.
well, I appreciate that, and that means a lot to me coming from you. And you have been so encouraging. And like any business owner, there's days you're like, "Oh, am I doing the right thing? This is a lot. This is hard." And then I get this random message from you, it just like, keep going. Just encouraging, keep going. What you're doing is good. Keep going. I'm like, okay. Okay, God, I hear you. Let's keep going. We need to do this. And we tell people at ASAP too. It's like, I've taken many different courses and I've needed to take those courses. I'm glad I took different courses. And we tell people, if you got the time and the money, take them all, and expand your knowledge base that much more. What we're about is, looking at the situation, what works in your hands, what works with your team's hands. Let's look at literature. What's your diagnosis? Now, when you got the diagnosis, what are you trying to accomplish for that diagnosis? What's your end goal, your end result? Now you can reach into your tool belt and pull out the different therapies you have learned to
Yeah.
apply because no child is the same. And
No.
what works for one kid may not work in another kiddo that has a lot of sensory issues. Maybe this child can't handle so much acrylic or has an allergy. Okay, well, maybe we're going over here and we're going to do ALF, or maybe we are doing a BioBlock, or maybe you're doing a Schwartz, or maybe you're doing TAT expansion in a non-growing child. It takes all of us together. It really does. And the more of us that are out there having these conversations and raising awareness, it helps all of us. So I am so appreciative to the people that have Jay Gerber. I'm just going to give a shout out to Jay Gerber. I learned some expansion techniques from him. Oh my goodness, he was doing airway minded orthodontics, TMJ minded orthodontics before really anybody was.
Yeah, no, he should have been on that list that we talked about in the beginning for sure. Was one of the original. At that time, they were all men, and one of the things that I've really have been waiting for is I've always believed that women were going to move to the forefront simply because of it's women that had that biological intuition that something was wrong with the kids that they couldn't articulate. And I was kind of there when that happened, when the moms were walking into Dr. Hang's office and other offices going, Something's just not right.
Mhm.
And they needed doctors to not assign a mental health diagnosis to that. It's implicitly or explicitly, and I hope I said that as gently as I could have, but there was a lot of that back then.
There was,
You
and
know, you're
still
you're you're a
sometimes
new
is.
mom, you're stressed out, you're tired, this is emotional. It's like, no, it was not emotional. It was physical. And when we started to see that, and is I've probably looked at more cases than any dentist under 40 at this point. And with all that experience, I still cannot understand that problem in an intuitive way as well as you can as a woman because of the biological connection between you and that child from birth. And my belief is that because of that, women are going to continue to lead the charge and not stop until there's as much awareness about a quote unquote airway checkup as there is about a hygiene checkup from 6 months on. It's just what you do. It's you check the teeth. Is the child breathing okay? Is tongue function proper? Do we need any myofunctional help? And how do we get in the business of prevention from birth? I mean, to think about, we're going to wait until a child turns 12 before we even look at their teeth. It's insanity.
Yeah.
But that's basically what we're saying with the airway. All these, this mouth, this deformed mouth, and these teeth that are, every degree on the whole 360-degree spectrum. We're just going to wait until they're like, what do you mean we're going to
Well,
wait
and
until they're
it's
12? Makes no
interesting.
sense.
There's a paper from over 100 years ago, and it discusses this very topic. You can see malocclusion in primary teeth, and lack of spacing between baby teeth is a form of malocclusion. You're
For
already
sure.
seeing growth and development hiccups when you don't have proper spacing between baby teeth. The permanent teeth are so much larger. You need room. So that's a sign that you don't have enough bone. Why don't you have enough bone? So the paper over 100 years ago, I loved what it said. It said, let's not wait until 12 and 14 to address these issues. These issues can be identified in the primary dentition. We need to be asking not only, we see the issue, but we need to be asking why the issue, which goes back to tongue posture, breathing, oral rest posture. Um, and all the heavy lifting and the life-changing uh, happenings, if you will, it's the orthopedics. It's when you get in there and you start pushing out the obstacles that cause the hiccups and get the kid back on the right path, at least get them caught up. You know, they're behind. Let's get them caught up and remove obstacles. Let's look at function. Let's look at breathing. Let's look at all those different things, neurology. Um, and then go from there. But what has happened, and it's changing, but what has happened in orthodontics over the years is the focus went to the braces. The focus went on to straightening the white things living in the bone. And you know what? If there's not room for some of those white things, we chuck them
Mm,
because it's all about just the white things. But now we know that the bone in which those white things rest in matters. There's an airway above the palate. The palate is the floor of the nose. There's an airway behind the palate, below the palate. You know, you've got a mandible, it all just connects. And we unfortunately in medicine have compartmentalized it. And I like what you said too in your bio that you're just going to have to be more of change your mindset as a healthcare provider if you're wanting to get into this arena and become a little bit more of a boutique style, if you will. Um,
mhm,
because if you're going to just be at the mercy of insurance reimbursements, you're going to be shackled
mm.
as to what you can accomplish.
Yeah, in the recovery community, one of our sayings is that, half measures avail us nothing, right? So, and what I see a lot with practitioners is they'll call me or my team and say, I've got, 6 years of CE behind me, and I've taken every course under the sun with Airway. And my question will be, okay, well, how many starts are you getting a month? Well, I haven't started yet. I hear that a lot,
Yeah, agreed.
and I understand that. I'm compassionate to that, and what my suggestion is with them is that the only thing you have to change is everything if you want to go in the right direction, and you do not have to do that all at once. So, if you want to get out of the insurance reimbursement model and away from competing on price with DSOs and corporate dental offices, there at some point, you are going to have to create value another way besides homogenized treatments that are with commoditized pricing. You just can't do it inside of that model. The insurance companies are not going to reimburse an airway check anytime soon. So you're going to need to find a way to provide value to a parent who can actually pay for that, either in the consult or down the road when you offer treatments. And the two ways that I've seen that happen, and you and Tracy and Michelle are great examples of this, are to create a reputation or some thought leadership for yourself saying, hey, I actually am a little bit different. We're going to look at a little bit more than teeth with your child. And if we see certain things, then we can get on a plan that's going to help them thrive in a way that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. Now, what I just said took 15 seconds and does not cost $1. All you have to do is start repeating those words a couple times a day. And that's enough to start. And a lot of times, we'll get somebody coming in and saying, well, I've got to be on social media. And my question is why? And they don't have a good answer to that. And my opinion, since she's part of your organization, Tracy Wen needs to be on social media. She's got a gift for that. She gets it. She knows how to do it. She's very connected. I would
Yeah.
say Lori Nahadas is the same way.
Yes.
Liz Turner and Maggie Graham off the
Yes.
charts.
Hmm.
Of the other 300 people I'll talk to this year, that list starts to get pretty small pretty quick. So, and a lot of these same doctors will say, well, I've got a new why. And my response to that is, well, let's talk about your why on how you market yourself. If you don't like being in front of a camera, if it's not natural for you to present yourself in social media, why are you doing that? There can only be two reasons. It's because I've got fear of missing out, or I want to become really good at that over time, and I'm willing to put in the work and the discomfort to do it. And the reason I say that about social media is because it's what I get the most. But when it comes to transitioning a practice from a marketing perspective, question number one is, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
What is your why? And for a lot of these dentists, it's, I just want to treat more patients. And there are ways to treat more patients without becoming a content creator on social media. And by the way, if intuitively you know how to do that, like Gloria and Tracy and Maggie and Liz, and no, not casting any dispersions to you and Michelle, but those
Oh,
four kill
absolutely.
it,
Yeah,
then by all means go for it. But if you don't, there are other ways to create awareness in your community about your expertise, your compassion, and your mission that don't involve you doing something that intuitively you know you're not good at and don't want to be good at. That's just going to demoralize you. So what we always want to do is the same thing for the providers that the providers want to do for the patients and the parents is let's get you on a path toward what you want that has you stepping outside of your comfort zone, but does not paralyze you with fear. And the two components of that, and you talked about that in the bio, are the thought leadership. There's a lot of different ways to create that. And then moving toward more of a boutique style practice where when somebody experiences what's going on in your clinic, they intuitively know that this might be more than just what Delta Dental is going to reimburse for the services. So on a very high level, that's just, and I'm not a marketing expert. I got a business degree and I was a video producer. I've just been at this a long, long time. I've read every book known to man, and I've made a ton of mistakes, as have my clients over the years. And that's just where I've landed. And I've looked in every direction I could possibly find. But with Dr. Hang back, 20 years ago, we just got him out in front of every audience we possibly could because we wanted to spread the message, and it was the only path we could see. That turned him into a thought leader. We didn't know we were doing that, which in turn helped us define his practice, which in turn attracted patients who would pay privately for what I believe was one of the, certainly not one of the cheaper fees
right,
for the
right, right,
dentist
right,
at the
right.
time, and a practice that did very, very well. The world just got us into that. There was nowhere else to go. We couldn't avoid promoting him as a thought leader and specializing the practice if we wanted to serve the people that we wanted to serve. And that's what I've seen with people that want to get into airway. I don't think you're going to be able to get away from promoting yourself as a thought leader in your community and your practice as a boutique service provider that's different and a little bit more expensive.
That's well said. And something we do, I mean, that's something within ASAP too. It's about raising up new leaders in
Mhm.
those. You have to. And this is what we tell our members. You're going to have to be brave, and you're going to have to be a thought leader in your community because really you're going to have to put yourself out there. There's some vulnerability in this, okay? And it's just being open to start asking questions. You don't have to be the expert. I mean, no one's the expert. We're not the expert. I mean, I might know more than the average dentist on airway, but then I'll learn something new and change what I've been doing, 3 weeks from now. I mean, you have to have humility and be open to the changes and have discussions in your community with other providers and medical colleagues. And because they don't know where to go either. They want to help their patients, they just don't know who's doing what. And there's not a huge connection between medical and dental like there used to be. There used to be a huge collaboration with medicine and dentistry. Like it would be great if we had, medical students had to do some type of, connect with dentists in the area and learn about dental medicine so they can then, when they are practicing after they graduate, they have an understanding of what dentistry has to offer, everything that's coming out. My gosh, I mean, someone just reached out to me yesterday afternoon. Did you know? I mean, this is not a dentist, it's a good friend of mine. Did you know there's a connection between Alzheimer's and periodontal disease? I'm like, yeah, we've known that for decades.
Mhm.
But the public doesn't know that because there's just not enough collaboration between medicine and dentistry. It's like we're over here, they're over there. Think of the people we can help, or think of the people you can help in your community if you are collaborating with a cardiologist, an ENT, a sleep physician, a pediatrician, primary care doctor. Just even one, you're going to start helping more patients, more people. It is interesting what you said about, again, I keep going back to how do you make a change? Our brains are wired, is what I've learned in my life, to talk us out of change. Our brains are wired because it's protection and it likes the familiar. Like you said, even if the familiar isn't good for us or others, it's familiar and the brain likes familiar. And I was reading a book. I read a few books by Mel Robbins, and one that I recently read was The 5 Second Rule.
Mhm.
It goes into the psychology as to why that happens, which sometimes we hear thoughts, right, in our head to talk us out of something, and we think, oh, I need to listen to my intuition. That's not necessarily your intuition. That's your brain trying to talk you out of something new that might feel scary because it thinks it's protecting you. But I like what she says, with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Don't even think, just say yes and just do it. You're going to have to just think of one thing, like you said, start somewhere and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go and just do it.
And it
And
doesn't mean, sorry to interrupt, Stacy.
no, no,
I, a lot of times when I talk to practitioners, that doesn't mean be reckless.
100%.
No, that's not jumping off a cliff. What it speaks to is the core problem that I see with providers when they want to move into more of an airway aware perspective for their practice is I just don't have the confidence. And what I try to share with them gently is you can't think, feel, or learn your way into confidence. That's about footwork.
It is.
So if you do something consistently and with discipline, you are going to become confident. You can start with conversations. If you have 3 or 4 conversations a day about airway related issues that you're seeing in your patients for 6 months, that's going to be hundreds of conversations, and you're going to start to become confident talking about airway. That's a great step.
It is a great step. I say
And
that.
I gave a couple of Brittany, what's Brittany's myofunctional therapist? What's Brittany's last name? I can't remember.
Oh my gosh. Oh shoot, it's escaping me right
Yeah,
now.
it's escaping me too. But Brittany called me 5 years ago and we were talking and and I had this conversation with her and I remember suggesting, I said, what is it that you know you need to do, but you're not doing? And she said, post on social media twice a day.
Mm.
I said, okay, we're going to talk in 90 days. How many social media posts are going to be done? And her first response was, I don't know. I said, no, Brittany, it's a math question. The number's 180. And she did it. Now, I don't, and when I saw her at the AAPMD meeting outside of Phoenix a few years back, and, she gave me a big hug. Oh, I did it. And I actually don't know if the social media posts move the needle on her practice at all, but I can guarantee you that the confidence she gained by doing that did. And she
That's
was
it.
teaching a bunch of stuff and it took off. And I see that over and over and over again is that first step where you're just doing something consistently and
Yeah.
breaking down, the ego's natural tendency to protect us and keep us where we are. It there's an enormous amount of value in that, no doubt
It,
about
it
it.
really is. And it's a story I heard Mel Robbins give about this very thing. Like, she knew exactly what Brittany knew exactly what she needed to do. She just wasn't doing it. Something in her was talking her out of it repeatedly because
Mhm.
it's trying to keep her from something new. And she just did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you were part of getting her to just go. And
A
really,
very small part of that, a very small part of
well,
that.
it
She
was a
just needed to
nudge
speak it
she
out loud.
needed, the
Yeah.
nudge she needed. And maybe you were one of several nudges that she
Mhm.
needed. And um, all of them are necessary because which nudge is the one that makes you do it? I don't know. 5 different people told me they all mattered, but really the outcome, like you said, I don't know if it moved the needle or that's irrelevant. What matters is she has the power within her to make the change that she knew she needed to make, and she did it.
Mhm.
The outcome of that was kind of irrelevant. It's just impressive that the power that lives within us to make change and to change our everyday is amazing. And to recognize that we have that power within us to make change in our everyday personal life, spiritual life, professional life, relationships, what have you. If you wait for the feelings, it'll never happen. Sometimes it's just you see the facts, you know you need to act. Um, and it's just a matter of take the first step, and conversations are it. Screening, that's it. Like start there. Start there.
It's funny because at the very base of what you're talking about is I'm not good enough. That is the issue. And in the recovery community, the analogy is once my own recovery is underway, the ask in the recovery community is now we want you to give that back through what we call sponsorship. So I get guided through a step process to find my own recovery, and then it's offered to me to do that for other people. And that's the initial response is, well, I'm not qualified, I'm not good enough. And in the recovery community, we actually gently suggest that that might be a pretty selfish perspective. Who are you to say that you do not have what somebody else needs? And I often will offer that perspective to doctors who call me, and they don't use the language, I'm not good enough, but that's really at the bottom of it. And I would suggest to them, who are you to say that? Who are you to say that you can't help somebody? Who are you to say that one conversation with a mother in your community might not lead to a diagnosis, a treatment, and a megaphone on every football field in that community that totally changes awareness around airway health for kids in that community? Who are you to say you're not that person? That's actually very arrogant of you.
It
It really
really
is.
is. That's a really
And
good point.
if you can just get outside of yourself for a minute and say, okay, if I can just spread awareness imperfectly, maybe that's enough to start. Maybe this actually really, really isn't about me. Maybe I've been touched to do something bigger in service of something much greater than me, which is the health of my patients and the health of my community. And that will carry me through the discomfort of getting the marbles out of my mouth when I talk about this, or the first few treatments, or making the commitment to get the CBCT machine, or whatever the case may be. Um, one of I really would challenge anybody who's listening to just ask the question, who are you to say that you have to play it small? Like, who are you to really say that? Is there any chance that that might just be a phenomenally selfish act, even though your intentions are the opposite of that and to serve?
I love that. That's so well said. Just the things I'm learning about the people that have made such an impact throughout history. Were they more knowledgeable? Were they experts? Were they this? Were they that? A lot of times, people that made impacts, whether Martin Luther King Jr. or Rosa Parks, just people that we now look at as heroes, they were everyday people that when asked to do something or the opportunity arose, they said yes. Okay.
Well, in the people we talked about at the beginning of the call, I know most of them personally.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we make up stories about them, about the lives they lived and what that journey was like, that I can tell you from personal experience is probably nothing like reality. You think you're not good enough? You should see the self-doubt those guys faced. Like, wow, like
Yeah.
nothing you could possibly imagine. None of it had ever been done before. There was no proof. They were going
Yeah.
completely on faith. And the feedback was almost unanimously negative from their peers.
Oh,
So
a
all
hundred.
they had to go on was, I know I'm onto something here, and I've got a patient that's getting better. And I'm getting walked into a peer review. I'm getting letters from lawyers. I'm getting banished from study clubs. There's not a university in the country that will take me as a speaker, but I'm gonna keep, I'm
Right.
gonna keep going. So you're not, if you're afraid to take the step, you're certainly not the first one. And again, I'm not here to say, other people's lives were worse. We all have our own experience, and fear is fear. It can be debilitating. But you certainly aren't alone in overcoming that to start taking steps in the right direction.
Agreed. And so hopefully somebody listening to this today will just do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start with something.
Yes.
And don't listen to the albeit good intentions of your brain to protect you. Uh, but I like it. Get out of your way. Get out of your own way. Like, who are you to say that you're not good enough to do this? Who are you to say you can't make an impact? That's very selfish of us. And that's
Yeah.
so true. It's so true. I know we got to get off here soon, and but I've got my three fun
Yes.
questions to ask you, Peter. And
Yep.
before I get into it, I just want to say thank you, friend, for joining me today and just having a conversation. Just conversations like this um, matter.
They do. They do.
They matter.
And likewise, thank you and Michelle and Tracy for all the hard work you've done and all the arrows you've taken to give folks a safe space to, be vulnerable and make decisions and get moving. I appreciate you too very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, without further ado, question number one, and this is kind of interesting. I picked this before we even talked. So, who would you consider someone that you really look up to, like a mentor or someone that you just really look up to?
Um, at this point in my life, of the somebody that I would suggest all of your listeners look up to, I would probably say Howie Hendon would be on the top of my list. Um, Howie is the founder and chairman of the AAPMD. He's in his mid 80s. He's still very active. He saw a change that needed to be made in the world. He became that change, and he has labored tirelessly for decades to bring his peers to a place of I don't think it's too dramatic of a word to say enlightenment and awareness about what's possible for them as dentists to make an impact in their patients' lives. And as a result of that, I think Howie himself has lived an incredibly purposeful and meaningful life and is leaving behind a legacy that will not soon be forgotten. That's not about ego or self-grandization, but it's about true impact on leaving the planet a better place than he found it. And I have tremendous respect and admiration for him.
Love that. And yes, he has. Yes, he has. That was well said. What was the last show you binge watched?
The last show. Oh, I'm watching one right now on Netflix about it's funny because I'm obviously you can tell by how I talk, I'm kind of very in touch with my feminine side. I watch a lot of stuff about war, and I'm watching a 7-part series on sieges. So like
Really
all the way back from Caesar all the way to, Vietnam. Yes, just
interesting. And
massive
that's on
amounts of pain and
Netflix.
suffering. So I think I can relate to that part of it, right? It's been a
Maybe
30-year.
that's what you're like. I can relate to this.
Completely. Going into the air as a digital marketing guy now, it's like, the low-hanging fruit is the general dentistry, emergency dental, it's easy. And
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, we'll get you going on airway. Yeah, it's a siege. It's a slow starvation and all kinds of pain and suffering. And maybe at the end you might break out. So yeah, that's what I've been,
Oh
that's
my
what
God.
I've been
That's what you want.
watching.
That's what I did not expect that.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could travel, last question, if you could travel anywhere, where
Mhm.
would you go?
If I could travel anywhere, where would I go? To a place where everybody else wanted to see everybody else succeed as much as I do. So
Oh,
it wouldn't necessarily be a geographical spot, but it would be to a community of like-minded people that wanted personal success to lead to meaningful community change, to lead to a better place that we all can leave behind when we're done.
well, if that community exists out there, I would love to go there too. And maybe if somebody knows about that community, they can reach out to us and let us know. I
Well,
love that.
I think there are many, and you and your partners underestimate yourself. I think you're a lot further along the road of creating that than you think you are. You
Oh,
guys are doing
thanks,
great
friend.
work.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate you. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody, for joining us. We'll see you again next time.